I'm Blake Hagemeyer with Fouled Reality and Realtree's the X, and today I want to talk about something that we've been doing the last couple of years as ducks and geese have been getting smarter and wiser and more conditioned to the way that guys are hunting them. And this is a good tip for those birds that are out in a field where you might not have a hide, but you've got a fence row or you've got a ditch or some kind of grass waterway out in there. Or if you're in a flooded marsh situation and birds are out in that smartweed, it's tough to hide, but there's a small group of trees out there. And this tip is getting set up outside of your decoys. And basically what it all boils down to is the hunters not being the focal point are looked at as they make their final approach. They're going to be looking at spinners or the bulk of the decoys, and most of the time that's going to be on the upwind side. So many times you see that's exactly where guys are set up trying to hide. And while that might present the best shooting opportunities on days where birds are going to cooperate, there's plenty of times that those shooting opportunities don't arise because birds won't commit with 4 or 5 blinds right where they're looking, wanting to land. By getting the blinds away from that spot, waterfowl are going to be less likely to pick you out as they make their final approach. You can set up further upwind from the spread or even off to the side. Yeah, it's going to be a cross shot, but what it all boils down to is getting your blinds away from that focal point, away from the head of that spread, where they're looking, where they're wanting to land. So we're not only utilizing this strategy out in a field where we feel like we can hide, but we're also doing it in those short stubble fields, the wheat, the bean stubble, the chisel plowed corn, the stuff where we don't feel like we can get hidden out in the middle of a field, but there's a fence row, there's a hedgerow, there's a little clump of trees, there's some kind of grass strip, something we feel we can hide that's nearby. We're going to utilize that same strategy in those situations. And while it's not the most ideal spot to be in, you can still have success at it. The key is to not bring your decoys right up against that edge. You've got to leave some sort of buffer. If you bring them right to that edge, a lot of those birds off in the distance are instantly going to pick you out and say, nope, that's not natural, that's not real. They're not even going to give you a look. If you start with some spacing away from that edge, you can get those birds to look and to work, and you're going to entice a few in and you're going to get some shots off. If they're leery, if they're not liking that 20-yard gap, move that leading edge of decoys back to 25, see if that helps. If they're not doing it then still, move it back to 30. Yes, that's a long shot, but I'd rather have a 30-yard shot than no shots at all. I've said it a million times. The key in this situation is you've got to be patient. You have to almost let those birds scrape the ground or kick the water. You want them to be right there in that last little back pedal of their wings before you call the shot. You want them to be as close as possible, and you're going to have to be a little more patient than normal, but that's how you're going to have success bringing birds to an edge, whether it is in a moist soil environment where you're in that little clump of trees against some open smartweed patches, or you're in that hedgerow that's along that chisel plowed cornfield or that bean stubble field. That's how you're going to have the best success bringing birds to one of those edges. You've got to be outside the decoys and you've got to find that happy medium. How close can you put those decoys to that edge and still get interest from those ducks and geese? So if you're in a situation where the birds just will not finish, you feel like they're picking you out at 60, 70, 80 yards and they're flaring and turning around, try to get those blinds, get that hide outside of the decoys. Or if you're in a spot where you don't think you can hide out in the middle, but there's somewhere nearby where you can get a hide, use this strategy. It's going to give you some shot opportunities. They might not be 10 and 15 yard chip shots, but I'd rather take those 25 and 30 yard shots than no shots at all. Check back next week as we use this strategy hunting Lake Erie on one of those edges where we had to set in the boat well outside of the decoys.